What's up, everybody? This is Post-Production Pi, Editor-in-Chief for srlounge.com. Welcome to another installment of our weekly Ordinary to Extraordinary Raw Edit featuring the Lightroom preset system V5. Now, as always, we'll be demonstrating how to create our effects using the preset system, and then we're going to be going through the actual develop settings just to help everyone understand what's going into each look and effect. And of course, for those that have the preset system versus those that don't, everybody can basically benefit just the same from watching this video. So if you are interested in learning more, by the way, if you don't have the presets, you can check out the SR Lounge Lightroom preset system by clicking the link below in the description. It'll take you over to the SR Lounge store where you can preview and learn more. And I'm done talking now, so let's get started. Up until this point, we've basically just been using our base presets, our base soft presets with different examples of portraits. And again, the base presets are great foundational presets that are one-click presets that you can just get to a finished look right away. But we haven't yet shown you the real strength in the Lightroom preset system, and that is in really following the BCAS system to developing. So starting with our base and then adding a curve and then making adjustments and special effects and so forth. We're going to start doing that now. We're going to be creating different mixologies and so forth, and kind of just teaching you the ropes of how the system works. So in this image right here, let's actually talk about this image for just 1 second. This was shot in Canton, China, and this is for a client of ours. Awesome client. There's such naturals in front of the camera, and this was taken, we did kind of this series of walking shots. This is a street that they commonly walk down. It's, well, not really a street, more like a path. Right next to the river, just a beautiful scene, especially during sunset like right now, or at least right now in this image. All right, it was taken on a 5D Mark II. It was on a 50mm 1.4 lens. Again, a great lens to have. I mean, we get these beautiful images out of it. If you don't have the money to go to a 1.2, then step up from the 1.8 to the 1.4, and it makes a huge difference. And the 1.4 is only, I don't know, 350, 400 bucks. So awesome lens. We shot this at 1/1250th of a second at f2 ISO 100. You'll notice that I stick to f2 on all my lenses, even when I'm shooting on my 1.2, just because I like to have that extra bit of sharpness. I still have a very nice buttery bokeh in the background, and it gives me a little bit easier time trying to find my focus. All right, so let's jump out of that information by hitting I. Now what we're going to do with this image is I want to create this nice kind of warm vintage fade to this image. So let's start off with a base preset, but this time instead of choosing one of the standard base presets, we're going to jump into a soft stylized preset. So let's flip through and kind of check these out. And this is what I love doing. I love to flip through each of the different fades. And let me show you how this works. So the bright fade with the skin desaturation, this is using basically a bright wash and then adding additional adjustments to kind of get the right look and adding skin desaturation to the color. Now a neutral fade is using a neutral wash and then it's adding adjustments and then using a skin desaturate again for the color. We have a punchy fade. This is using a vintage punch and skin desaturation. And then we have a dark fade, which is using a dark wash along with skin desaturation. Now, what am I talking about with these bright fades, neutral fades? Well, if you guys have used the Lightroom 4 preset system, you probably know, but if you're new, then let me show you. Each one of these curves is separated with different curves based on color schema. So right now in the neutral curves, we basically have curves that modify only the original colors. Once we get into the cool curves, these are curves that add basically cool tones to an image. So they actually add colors. Warm tones are going to add warm colors, and then antique and black and white curves, these are going to basically make either black and white or black and white toned, duotoned images. In each of these curved sections, we have bright washes, neutral punches, and vintage punches, along with dark washes, sorry. So we have 5 different categories, and each of them do slightly different things. So this video is going to be a little bit longer because I'm explaining all this stuff, but don't worry, it'll benefit you in the long run. All right, so with the neutral punches, these are all the effects or all the curves that we're using within the standard soft category. So the standard soft category, which is just for our standard color and high contrast and heavy crush and soft, these are the curves that we're using in here. Same thing with the vivids. The vivid standard category, these are using all of the neutral punch presets. Now our neutral punches are basically being used in the soft and the vivid category. These are all of our standard looks, just the basically high contrast color looks, the soft color looks. We're using neutral punches for each of these categories. When you step into the stylized categories, now we're using the different types of washes to create each effect. So let's go over these different washes. We have a bright wash, which is basically, it's very simple. Our naming scheme just basically follows Well, it starts with an adjustment to the brightness level. So we're either brightening, we're either leaving it neutral, or we're darkening. Now with a vintage punch, it's neutral, except we just didn't put neutral vintage punch because it got too long. So we just put vintage punch. So we're brightening up here. These are not affecting overall exposure all the way through the vintage punches. And then over down here, we're darkening the overall exposure. Now with the wash, the second word is describing overall contrast. So wash is washing out the image. Each one of these is washing with a section of the neutral punches and the vintage punches. Both of these are boosting overall contrast. Okay, and then we have dark washes, which again wash out the contrast in the image. The last word defines the color toning. So here we're working once again in the neutral curves. So basically these color toning adjustments are just tweaking or changing, modifying slightly the natural colors of the image. So we have a bright wash, which is saturating the image, a skin desaturation versus a light desaturation overall, and then a desaturated cross process. If we go down to the cool or the warm, we'll see that the last word is basically a color tone that's going to change the overall looks based on these different colors. So this is going to add teal toning, blue toning for azure, violet toning here, cool cross process, which is going to have an overall cooler tone cross process look. Okay, so that's the curves there. So let's go back up to the top. Now with each of these, so a bright fade skin desat. So this is a preset that basically is going to brighten the image and then fade it out and add skin desaturation. We have a neutral fade, which isn't going to brighten, it's just going to fade and then add skin desaturation. We have the punchy fade, which adds a contrast with a fade and skin desaturation. And then we have the dark fade, which is going to be darkening and then fading out the image or washing out the image with skin desaturation. Now at any point in time we can modify the curve, and this is the beautiful part about this. Let's say I choose a dark fade, and a lot of people don't understand why we have the dark fades. Dark fades are beautiful for creating just a more powerful vintage effect or for creating darker editorial looks with your shots. So we can select this dark fade. I think either I'm going to go with a dark fade or a punchy fade for this image, and I really like the dark fade, so let's try that. Now what I'm going to do from here is just go and drag my exposure up until I get to kind of a nice point. And I get that point right around here, like around +2. Okay, so remember we darkened an image that was already dark to begin with, so we have to bring up the exposure quite a bit because the image was underexposed to begin with. But it gives us a very nice, very kind of over the top fade look to this image, and I love it. I absolutely dig it. Now once we have a dark fade selected, we can go down and change the curve to any kind of color that we want just by selecting a dark wash. So any of these dark washes are only going to change the overall colors. They're not going to change anything else. Because again, this preset that we selected was a dark fade, and so all the settings are designed for the dark washes. So we can modify and add any different type of dark wash that we want to get to the look that we want to go with. Now let's go and just flip through these. So we have the neutral dark washes, which is again, these aren't modifying, they're not adding colors, they're just modifying original colors. Okay, and then once again we have our warm dark washes, and this is what I actually want to stick with for this image. So this is amber, yellow, apricot's going to be more orange, crimson more red, and then we have warm cross processing here. I'm going to go with, say, either a apricot or possibly maybe even a crimson. I think the crimson looks beautiful on this image. That slight red toning is great. So now we've done our base, we've selected our base, which is a dark fade. We modified the dark wash along with it, choosing a warm wash. So we followed the BC, so we have BCAS. We've modified our base, we've modified our curve now, and now we can go down and we can make adjustments if we want to. So if we want to, say, add like additional contrast, well, we can do that here, just add whatever contrast we want. If you want a more contrasty fade look to this image, I'm going to leave it kind of zero. I like it with that very soft vintage fade. But any details that you do want to modify here, you can. I'm going to do one detail adjustment, which I'm going to take the softening down a little bit. Let's actually go down to a light detail soften for the skin tones. All right, and this is looking pretty solid right here. What I'm going to do now is we've made our base, curve, and adjustment. I'm going to go down to special effects. So this is the last step in BCAS, and I'm going to add a different color scheme. Now once again, we're basically adding 2 layers of color. So I can add additional layers on top of the curve that I already have applied. And the yellow violet is where I really want to go with this. I love this look to this image, but I can always modify and just flip through and see what I like. Again, you're seeing the power of the preset system because we're able to quickly modify and switch through different types of color schemes very quickly and simply. These are all color schemes that are based on complementary and analogous and tone-on-tone colors. right off the color wheel. So these are the most common colors that you're going to be seeing in, say, film and still image grading, which we have here. So I'm going to go with that yellow violet because I love that kind of warm complementary look to this image. And again, we can do another layer of color modification by adjusting our temperature and tint. So if we want to get a little more greens in here, I can pull it down and then I can lower our temperature to kind of give it a softer look to that toning. And this looks awesome right now. I love the way it looks right now. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this right here. So again, that's what we did. We basically we chose our dark fade skin desat. We went down and made a modification to our detail. Well, actually, sorry, we changed our curve to an apricot. So no, I think we did crimson. Yeah, we did crimson dark wash. Then we went down to detail and skin. We did a light detail soften. And then we went down to color scheme, and I think we added the yellow violet. So at this point, we've made a mixology using 4 clicks. Okay, so 4 different clicks took us to this mixology. And now what I'm going to do is save this out. This is when we want to start saving our mixologies as new presets. All right, so what I'm going to do is hit plus, and I'm going to save this into my mixology Pi. And what we're going to do is click check all, and once again, these are the settings you want to use. First, we want to deselect white balance, deselect exposure, because in general, when I'm flipping between my mixologies, I want to have my temperature and my exposure dialed in, and I just want to look at the differences from preset to preset. So those 2 things I don't want changed. Next, I'm going to go over to lens corrections and deselect all of them. We're going to reselect the lens vignetting. Everything else is built into whether we choose, whatever import preset we basically choose. All right, and the last one, we're going to deselect calibration. Now I'm going to label this preset. So I'm going to give it a nice name. I'm going to say, let's say dark yellow violet. I don't know if we can use, I don't think we can use those slashes actually. Let's go yellow violet fade. Okay, so this gives me an idea of what the preset's going to do. Again, I like to have descriptive names. I'm going to put this as just 01 for now until I figure out a better organization. We have to have more presets before we can kind of organize. So let's just call it that for now. We're going to hit create, and now we have this dark yellow violet fade right here created, which is that mixture of different effects that we did. Okay, so let's go over to the right side and let's kind of investigate what we did over here in all the settings so we can see what's being done. And I'm actually going to tweak my exposure just a bit to bring it up. Okay, so over here we have, we dropped our temperature a bit. Again, you can kind of raise the warmth, keep it wherever you want. We're keeping around 3700 for this type of image. I added a little bit of greens back in by dropping the tint, and exposure we're raising up quite a bit because that dark wash is darkening, and you can see that being pulled down in the curve. Next, for highlights and whites, we have it dropped a bit, and this is pulling down those highlights on the skin tones. Shadows and blacks are crushed a bit. This is creating a little bit of a deep black, which is getting clipped out in this curve. All right, in the clarity, we have -10 clarity for skin, just to kind of soften up the overall image. We have this nice vintage soft look, and so I want to complement that with a little bit less clarity. Vibrance, we have -10 and -20, so this is a desaturated look for the image. Okay, so we can leave vibrance wherever we want. The more vibrance is up and saturation is up, the more original tones we're going to get in this image. So I actually, I think I applied that vibrance and saturation adjustment when we chose one of the I think it was a neutral curve that actually desaturated, and then we didn't adjust it back at that point. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to saturation, and we're just going to leave it as zeroed, and we can do a couple different things. We can visit our saturation, do skin desat, and I actually kind of like that. Maybe I'll just leave it with the skin desaturation. And since I made that adjustment, I'm going to go up to my dark yellow violet fade. I'm going to update it. And we're going to have, we already have all the settings dialed in, so I just need to hit update. And I am going to rename that too. I'm just going to rename it, and I'm going to say plus skin desat. That way I kind of know what it's doing to the color. I'll need to extend this out a little bit to see it all, but that's okay. All right, so this is now updated, so we have that new saturation adjustment. So we just basically pulled down vibrance by -5, saturation by -5, and actually I don't think we got the skin desaturation. I think we selected just the light skin desaturation instead of the heavy. So let me do that one more time. Yeah, we didn't de-red. So you have light skin desat, and we have de-red desat. So I want to actually de-red it. Let me just update that again. Okay, there we go. Now we have our de-red settings, and that's perfect. Now let's check out this tone curve, because this is where things get funky. This tone curve is adding a lot of our effect that we're seeing. So we're raising up our shadow clipping, and we're dropping down the highlight clipping and creating a very subtle curve that's keeping a lot of our tone range. If you remember, in the Lightroom 4 preset system, each of the curves only had 4 points. We added points to it. That way we could have more subtle curves. It kept the tonal gradation much better. Overall, we got a better quality and look to the image. All right, so if we flip to reds, we can see that the reds have been boosted in this preset. We can see that the greens, they're about neutral. We have a little bit more than neutral. And then in the blues, we're dropping the blues a bit. So that way we get that kind of warm crimson look to it. And that's where the red comes in this dark wash. All right, so let's go back to RGB and let's keep scrolling down. We just went over our HSL. Now we have split toning. This is where that special effects comes in. We're adding split toning with complementary colors. So we have yellow up top on the highlights and we have violets up in the shadows. Okay, the adjustments have been made to basically give you a really nice overall look for the majority of images. But if you want to tweak the balance between highlights and shadows, you can. You can just adjust the balance back and forth and you get completely different looks with our image. If we want to tweak the saturation, again, you can. The presets that we have made, they're based on what's going to look good over the majority of images. But I like it where it's at, so I'm just going to keep it. Detail, we have the same detail settings being applied. Again, 71.5, 1030. Looks good. We don't need any extra going on there. With noise reduction, we don't have any applied because this wasn't one of the soft preset, or it's a soft preset, but it's not basically a portrait preset that's specifically designated for this. Because we're doing a fade, we really don't need to reduce noise. I'm just going to leave it natural where it's at. All right, let's go down and we have vignetting set to 0 along with the preset. So that way, again, we have a subtle, just natural vignetting effect occurring with these types of looks. Again, with the fades, we don't want edge to edge evenness. We want that subtle kind of fade to the edge. Now, if we want to with this image, we could, of course, add grain. That's going to come into play more when we start doing the filmic effects and so forth. But for now, this is really nice where it's at. All right, so let's check out the before and the after before I make one adjustment here. I want to remove that pull. I'm going to show you guys a quick way how to do that. But let's hit backslash. Here's the before. Here's our after. We had 4 clicks to get there. We'll get a beautiful fade look to this image. Very quick, very easy to test between different types of looks for a particular image and for a particular preset that you're creating, okay? So this is why it's a preset system. It's a system for creating awesome presets and for developing, but it's a system for presets. All right, let's go over here. We're going to select an adjustment brush. I'm going to choose the Dodge Whiten by 4 stops. We're going to zoom in right here, and I'm just going to blow this area out, and it's going to automatically take the color of the background, so we don't really have to worry about anything there. It's okay if we get a little bit of hair. I'm not too worried. It's going to look very natural when we zoom out. All right, so that's it. We removed the pull right there. Again, here is that before. Here's our final after. We have a beautiful, we have warm yellow-violet fade to this image. You guys can tweak to your heart's content, but that's it for this video. So I'll see you all in the next video.